This time, let your brother have a baby. You can have another one later. I told my parents I was pregnant. Then my mom said something shocking. Zach and his wife Rosie, who can't have kids, want us to give them our baby for adoption. My parents always favored Zach and ignored me. The happy future I imagined with my first baby turned into sadness. I'm Olivia. I've been married to Walt for 3 years. We're happy and thinking about having a baby soon. But I haven't been close to my family because of issues with my parents and brother Zach. In our family house, my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie all live together. Zach has been praised since he was little, excelling in school and landing a job at a big company, which he'll probably take over from Dad. Our parents have always adored him. I, on the other hand, didn't stand out academically and wasn't as good-looking, so I never felt that close to our parents. I often felt left out and lonely because Zach got so much attention. Mom especially favored him, always by his side and hardly ever paying attention to me. When she did talk to me, it was usually criticism. Zach followed Mom's lead and didn't treat me well either, so we never really got along. I felt like I didn't belong at home and became more and more isolated. Because of that, right after finishing high school, I moved out. My parents didn't seem bothered when I told them I was leaving. If anything, they seemed happy about it. After leaving, I found a job, and 3 years later, I married Walt, who was in the same class as me. I wanted to start my own family and find peace away from my parents' influence. I only go back home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I don't really want to, but my parents insist. They care a lot about appearances, and it wouldn't look good if their daughter never visited. So I put up with it and visit twice a year. I reluctantly went back this Thanksgiving, but my mother was as distant as ever. "You and your husband are still not that impressive," she said, dampening the festive atmosphere. She started being sarcastic right away. She only called us back to say such things. If she's going to be like this, she shouldn't even bother calling, I thought, trying to ignore her sarcasm. But she kept going. "We're worried about you. You two live so modestly. We always think you'll come asking for money. My family is pretty wealthy, but since I left, I've never asked for financial help. Walt and I manage fine on our own earnings. We even send them proper birthday gifts." "We would never do that," I quickly replied to her unfounded accusation. Then she said, "But you two are still earning modestly, right?" and turned to look at Walt next to me. "Walt, you're still at that detective agency, right? How long do you plan to stick with that questionable job? Aren't you embarrassed?" Indeed, Walt works as a detective, something she always mocks. She sees detective work as sketchy and inferior to regular jobs. As Walt tried to explain his job to her, Zach jumped in. "Mom, there's no point in even listening to that. Detective work is shady, something nobody respectable does. It's a job for people beneath us. The pay must be peanuts compared to mine," showing off his superiority. Zach shared her disdain for detective work, a sentiment we've heard since we got married. Walt stayed quiet, but I felt upset that his job was being dismissed outright. Walt has always been my support, understanding what my family is like since our college days. That's why he always joins me when we visit my parents, not wanting to leave me alone. Even though he knows it won't be pleasant, I still feel guilty about it. Like many visits before, this one ended on a sour note. Around that time, we decided to live modestly together, unaffected by my family's opinions. Something amazing happened in our 3rd year of marriage. I found out I was pregnant. I was thrilled to be expecting our first child. Knowing how my parents always put me down, I felt like I had to share the news with them, so I went to our family home to tell them. It had been a while since I visited outside of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my parents, Zach, and his wife Rosie were all there, but their reaction to my announcement caught me off guard. When my mother heard the news, she suddenly got loud. "How could you say that in front of Zach?" Her response was unexpected. I wasn't expecting congratulations, but this was different. I was confused by her mentioning Zach, and when I looked puzzled, she dropped a bombshell. "Zach and Rosie can't have kids. How could you be so insensitive?" I had no clue they were dealing with infertility. Shocked by her words, I glanced at them. Zach seemed uncomfortable, and Rosie looked down sadly. "You're having a baby before Zach. If it wasn't for Rosie, this wouldn't be happening." My mother sighed dramatically, looking between Rosie and me. Seeing this, Zach stepped in. "Rosie already feels bad enough. Don't be too hard on her, Mom." I was surprised to hear him defend Rosie. From what I knew from my visits, Zach wasn't usually that supportive of her. "You're really kind, Zach." Then Zach said something that made me pause. "Rosie, if it weren't for being married to Zach, you would have been divorced by now." My mother shot Rosie a glare. Maybe despite everything, Zach does care about his wife. As I watched Zach calm our mother down, I thought about what had just happened. Well, I shared my news, so I should head home, I said, feeling the tension rise because of my announcement. But then my mother said something unbelievable. "Give your baby to Zach." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Give my baby to Zach. Why should I? I can have another baby if I want to. Just because Rosie can't have children doesn't mean I should give mine away. That's unfair and ridiculous. When I refused, my mother argued, "This is our first grandchild. It should be raised by us. Zach will take over the company, so we should raise the baby." Her words made me furious. She was planning to take my unborn child just to ensure a successor for our father's company. She talked about adoption like she had it all planned out, but I was too angry to listen. I was already irritated, and then Zach said something shocking. "Well, since Rosie can't have kids, it's good for her that you got pregnant. You're finally doing something for the family." I couldn't believe it, but Zach seemed to agree with my mom. Even Dad, who usually stays quiet, nodded along. It felt like the whole family was claiming my baby as their own. I couldn't believe how casually Zach spoke to his own wife like that, acting like it was no big deal. I realized there was no point in arguing further, so I left right away. All they said was, "Give us an answer next time you come," and didn't even come to say goodbye. Rosie, who must have been hurt, silently watched me leave. Even after I got home, I couldn't shake off my anger. Instead of celebrating my pregnancy, they made this unreasonable demand. I felt gloomy thinking about the future. They probably keep pushing for adoption even after the baby was born. When I told Walt what happened after he got back from work, he was shocked too. Even he couldn't find the words to respond. He knows my family, but this was beyond belief. A few days later, we were surprised by an unexpected visitor at home. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" "It's rare to see you alone," I said to Rosie. She looked tired, with dull skin and messy hair. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at us. "Olivia, I'm really sorry about what happened the other day," she said, referring to when I announced my pregnancy. It wasn't her fault, but she seemed burdened by the unreasonable demands my family had made. Then she said she had something important to discuss. "What is it?" I asked, inviting her in to talk. What she told me was shocking, and my anger flared up again. Trying to stay calm, she shared a significant truth with me. Walt had been quietly listening to our conversation and then chimed in with something equally astonishing and infuriating. Rosie's tears started again as she listened to Walt. With this new information from both of them, I made a decision. I vowed to myself to hold my parents and Zach accountable, to settle past grievances and seek justice. 3 months later, with my belly starting to show, Walt and I visited my family home. My parents, Zach and Rosie, were there. Without even a greeting, my mother asked, "You've decided to give the baby to Zach, right?" It seemed like she couldn't think of anything else. As I've said before, that's not happening. I replied, but my parents glared at me as if they couldn't accept it. "No matter what you say, we're taking that baby. Stop being stubborn," my mother said, clearly angered by my refusal. Zach and my father just watched, not intervening. "No matter how much you insist, I'll never give the baby away. But I came here today to show you something." "Is that okay, Rosie?" I asked, looking at Rosie, who nodded silently. Rosie intends to divorce Zach, and this is why. I pulled out some photos from an envelope I had brought. That was the reason for my visit today. Zach was speechless as he looked at the photos. They clearly showed him kissing another woman and entering a hotel. Undeniable proof of his infidelity. "Shocked to have been caught," he muttered. "Who took these photos?" Our parents, standing next to Zach, looked bewildered, their gaze shifting between him and me. They probably had no idea about his affair. "It was Walt who took these," I said. Walt, who had been silently observing, explained how he had come across the photos. As a detective, he had seen Zach with another woman while working on a case. Out of curiosity, he investigated further and found out about Zach's affair. The decisive moment was captured in those photos, as Zach thought he had cleverly hidden his affair. He was stunned and speechless. "Adultery is grounds for divorce. You need to compensate Rosie properly," I said, breaking the tense silence. But Zach, instead of apologizing, blamed Rosie for his actions. "Yeah, it's your fault, Rosie. You're so incompetent. I'm just having a little fun outside," he said, with our mother backing him up, trying to shift the blame away from Zach. Seeing Rosie treated like I once was made me feel terribly sorry for her. So I decided to confront my family to save both of us. I pushed them further by pointing out Zach's faults. "Zach, you mocked Walt, but a professional detective's skills are extraordinary. Evidence kept piling up as soon as he started investigating. And we found out something shocking about your mistress," I said, watching my parents tense up, wondering what would come next. "The woman you're seeing seems to be the daughter of a mafia boss," I revealed, watching Zach freeze in shock. He must not have known that. My mother screamed, "What? Is that true?" Upon hearing the revelation, she collapsed to the ground, covering her face, while my father looked terrified. "Zach, you were pretending to be single, right?" I asked, and Zach started to panic. "No, I didn't know either." Our parents, who had been so authoritative just moments ago, were now completely bewildered by this unexpected revelation. Then Rosie spoke up amidst the confusion. "You didn't just deceive your mistress, did you?" Her words brought tension back into the room. She repeated what she had told me during her visit. "You're infertile, aren't you?" Zach's face betrayed a look of realization. Our parents stared at him in shock. They had blamed Rosie for their infertility issues, but the truth was it was Zach himself. "Did you know, Rosie?" That was all he could manage to say. Our stunned parents struggled to find their next words, visibly shaken by the revelation. Rosie delivered the final blow. I found out accidentally while cleaning the room. She had stumbled upon his infertility diagnosis hidden in his desk drawer. Unable to admit it to his loving parents, Zach had kept this fact a secret and blamed Rosie for their infertility. Believing his words, our parents had unfairly blamed Rosie. His protective comments about Rosie when I announced my pregnancy were probably driven by his guilt over the issue. Blamed for something she had no control over, Rosie suffered every day. As the conversation turned to the topic of taking my child, Rosie spoke with a calm, unchanged expression. Meanwhile, my parents, just learning the shocking truth, were in a panic. "To think Zach will never have a child, that's just," my mother began, despairing at the thought of not having a grandchild. But then she turned her hysterical anger towards him. "You knew it was your fault, yet you blamed your wife. Did you cheat because you knew you were infertile? How could my son stoop so low? Oh dear, why did this happen?" She vented her frustration at him. Finally, Zach spoke, offering a pitiful explanation. "I was shocked to find out I was infertile. I felt guilty for not giving you a grandchild. When I found out Olivia was pregnant with a boy, it just seemed convenient." His words filled me with contempt. Pushing aside my anger, I delivered the final blow to the three of them. "Your selfish actions hurt Rosie and me. And Zach, you had an affair with such a dangerous person. Mom and Dad, you'll have to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt so many people, now it's time to face the music." My words prompted them to apologize, their earlier bravado gone. Where did that confidence go when you asked me to give up my son? I looked at them with disdain, feeling as though I was looking at garbage. Beside me, Rosie remained silent, her gaze fixed ahead, silently conveying the depth of her sorrow. Tough times lay ahead for Zach and my parents. When the father of Zach's mistress discovered the affair, they were summoned and forced to apologize repeatedly. Despite ending the affair, Zach had to pay a hefty compensation for deceiving the woman. The amount was staggering, teaching them the harsh consequences of getting involved with such people. As a result, our family home descended into chaos. My father had to step down as company president due to the public scandal, and my mother became isolated, shunned by the neighbors, and withdrawing into herself. Their relationship became hostile, constantly arguing over Zach's actions. Zach lost his job after the scandal reached his company, and to add to his troubles, his divorce with Rosie was finalized. Struggling with unemployment and financial burdens, Zach found himself trapped in a cycle of relentless work. Around the time Rosie successfully left the family home, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both the baby and I were in good health, and I reveled in the joy of welcoming new life. Our family of three embarked on happy days together. Eventually, Walt and I made the decision to sever all ties with my family. Although I have been torn about cutting off contact with my parents and brother, that incident made me realize it was the best decision for my son's well-being. Despite their absence, I have found solace and love in my irreplaceable family. From now on, I choose to cherish only my precious family. Starting today, we're moving in with my parents. It's not a big deal because they're my own parents, right? But my husband surprised me with this idea out of nowhere. I was so shocked and close to tears, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just a few days after my father's funeral, my husband decided we should move out of our home. It was a shock because my emotions were still raw from saying goodbye to Dad. He didn't seem to understand my grief and chose our new place without asking how I felt. Surprisingly, it was a villa my father had left me. When we got there, my in-laws had already moved in. I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me. I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now, they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. "We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. "The floor just gave way under me," she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. "The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped," they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, "I'm certain the floor collapsed." As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. "What was that?" they exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think a floor had collapsed. "Look, the floor sinks a bit." "It's like a trap," I clarified. "That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house?" They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. "It's not a flaw," I assured them. "My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house." "Why would he do that?" they asked, perplexed. "Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity," I explained. "As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions. like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villas and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing, but ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope. Given that I'll be the primary inhabitant of our new abode, it only makes sense that the largest room becomes mine, she declared confidently. From that moment onward, she staked her claim on our new home with the assertiveness of a seasoned owner. Her brazen remarks ignited a storm of indignation within me. "Pardon me, but I'm curious, where exactly would your room be if you're so insistent?" I countered, unable to contain my irritation. Upon hearing my retort, my sister-in-law flushed crimson and launched towards me. "I'm Sophia, a 32-year-old corporate professional. George, my husband, and I have been inseparable since high school, celebrating 7 years of marriage. Perhaps owing to our extensive shared history, our relationship resembles that of an old married couple more than most couples our age. Nevertheless, I can't fathom being with anyone but George. I've always had a great rapport with my in-laws, and presently we find ourselves cohabiting for various reasons. With my father-in-law on the brink of retirement and my mother-in-law juggling part-time work, we share household responsibilities and contribute to the financial upkeep of the household. Things were cruising along smoothly until an unexpected visitor disrupted the tranquility. One lazy Sunday, as we savored the serenity of the weekend, the jeering sound of a truck reversing shattered the peace. Curiosity piqued, we exchanged puzzled glances. Did anyone order something? As she barged in with an entourage of movers, my heart sank. My room's on the right, second floor, she declared, oblivious to our surprise. Oh, and I seem to have misplaced the key. Could someone let me in? A chill ran down my spine at the unmistakable voice. As we approached the front door, there stood Charlotte, my long-absent sister-in-law, flanked by movers lugging cardboard boxes. Wait a moment, Charlotte. What's the meaning of this sudden appearance without so much as a heads up? And who are these people with you? I questioned, a mix of surprise and irritation coloring my tone. Charlotte seemed genuinely perplexed by our reaction. What do you mean? I quit my job and found myself jobless, so I'm moving back home. Since it's my parents' house, I didn't think it necessary to inform you guys beforehand. Heh, she explained with a carefree shrug. We stood there dumbfounded, while the movers behind her exchanged uncertain glances. Never mind them, just get on with moving my stuff in, Charlotte instructed nonchalantly, striding confidently into our home and up the stairs. Ha, my old room's been turned into a storage space. Get this stuff out of here. Her sharp voice echoed from the second floor, leaving us bewildered. What do we do now? I turned to my husband and in-laws, their expressions mirroring my own frustration. Let's hear her out first and then figure out a plan to get her to leave. Given her stubborn nature, she won't budge if we simply ask her to, my father-in-law suggested wearily, his demeanor suddenly aged. Reluctantly, we piled Charlotte's belongings in the hallway, buying time as we deliberated our next steps. Charlotte's petulant expression was all too familiar, her sulking demeanor grating on my nerves. Oh, and why are George and his wife here? Are you guys crashing with mom and dad because you're broke or something? She jabbed, her words a sharp reminder of her tactlessness. Charlotte's derisive snort dredged up a flood of unpleasant memories. She was 2 years my junior, yet my disdain for her stretched back to her high school days. Our shared alma mater was the source of our initial acquaintance. I vividly recalled Charlotte's audacious approach during our student years. You're George's girlfriend, right? Well, since I'm your sister-in-law, why not lend me some money? She had brazenly demanded. From that very first encounter, she had shown a blatant disregard for boundaries, addressing me disrespectfully despite my seniority. Her audacity didn't stop at her presumptuous request. She even had the nerve to casually ask her own older brother for money. My response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. Though she bore the title of my boyfriend's sister, I refused to indulge her entitled behavior. Charlotte's reaction to my refusal was predictably disdainful. Geez, you're so stingy, she retorted, her words dripping with disdain. Damn, she shot me a disdainful glance before striding away. You're the crazy one here. That encounter marked my unsettling introduction to my sister-in-law, Charlotte. As it turned out, her behavior towards her own family was even more troubling, a fact my in-laws had been grappling with for quite some time. Her tumultuous history in school was a constant source of concern, prompting frequent summons for her beleaguered parents. Even after graduating, Charlotte remained adrift, her days characterized by idleness and mischief. At our wedding, her antics reached a new low. Her excessive drinking led to a state of inebriation, during which she shamelessly flirted with any man who caught her eye. And as if that weren't enough, she took it upon herself to critique my bridal attire with a pointed, mocking remark. That dress doesn't suit you one bit, she jeered, followed by a burst of laughter. It was a moment I'd sooner forget. Following her disruptive behavior that day, Charlotte's relationship with her own family deteriorated to the brink of estrangement. Her departure, fueled by anger, left a bitter aftertaste, yet to everyone's astonishment, she resurfaced years later as though nothing had transpired, leaving our family utterly bewildered. It's because our lease at the old apartment was up, but our new house isn't ready yet, so Dad graciously let us stay here, George clarified, casting a fond glance at Charlotte. You're building a house, George. Impressive, Charlotte remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. When George and Sophia's new house is ready, we'll be moving out too, Charlotte, my mother-in-law stated icily. How can you be so heartless toward a daughter who's just endured a breakup and is jobless? Is that how you define motherhood? Moving into George's new house signifies a fresh start for us, my father-in-law added, his voice tinged with resolve. You've always favored George over me, Charlotte shot back at her parents, her footsteps heavy as she stormed up the stairs and out of sight. According to Charlotte, she had experienced a breakup, lost her way, and found herself returning home in search of solace. Since that day, Charlotte's presence shattered the tranquility of our family life. Our lifestyles clashed on multiple fronts. Her late-night, boisterous phone conversations with friends often sparked heated arguments between her and George. Despite shirking any household responsibilities, Charlotte never hesitated to voice her culinary preferences. Fish? Ah, I hate them. Too many pesky bones. Can't you whip up some meatloaf instead? She'd interject. Fed up with her intrusion, I finally confronted Charlotte. If you crave meatloaf, kindly prepare it yourself or perhaps contribute to the household expenses. How does that sound? Charlotte's perpetual attitude towards me only exacerbated the tension. My disdain for her ran deep, so I maintained a formal demeanor whenever interacting with her, a subtle reminder that I wasn't one of her casual acquaintances. Yet she persisted in addressing me only as Hey or George's wife. In response, I resolved to reciprocate by addressing her solely as Hey. Fully aware of her aversion to fish, I confronted her about her lack of contribution to household expenses. Why should I chip in for my own living expenses? You're nothing but a leech, surviving off George's earnings and my family's support. Don't act so entitled. Charlotte's audacity left me speechless. Seriously, is that how you perceive it? And how's the job search and apartment hunt going? Our new home is nearly ready, I countered. Her face flushed momentarily before she retorted with a smug grin. Don't worry, I've got it all figured out, her tone dripping with self-satisfaction. In the midst of our heated exchange, my mother-in-law, Susan, appeared visibly concerned. Sophia, dear, I'm truly sorry if Charlotte is causing you distress. Are you all right? She inquired, her worry evident in her voice. Dealing with Charlotte had taken its toll on everyone, her stubbornness making it nearly impossible to reason with her. I'm all right, Susan, but you should take a break too. It seems like Charlotte has gotten the wrong end of the stick. Is everything all right? I asked, concern evident in my voice. Susan's response was a heavy sigh. Even her father and I can't get through to her. She just barricades herself in her room and tells us to stop badgering her. I sometimes wonder if she'd emerge if we set off a bug bomb, Susan quipped, eliciting a chuckle from me. After days of anticipation, our dream home was finally complete. George and I had poured our hearts and souls into saving for the down payment, and now the kitchen bore my personal touch. While the bathroom had been transformed into a haven for my husband's love of long baths, it truly was our dream abode. As we immersed ourselves in the joy of unpacking and settling in, the doorbell interrupted our reverie. Expecting George's parents, I glanced at the monitor to find Charlotte tagging along. I really don't want her invading our new space, I muttered, unable to suppress a grimace. Charlotte swaggered into our freshly minted abode, her demeanor oozing with arrogance. George really outdid himself. This place is quite spacious. Nothing beats a brand new home, she proclaimed boldly. She proceeded to fling open doors to various rooms without so much as a by your leave. My irritation reached its peak, and I was on the verge of giving her a piece of my mind when George's father intervened. Hey, that's impolite, he scolded her sternly. Unfazed, Charlotte pouted and retorted, what's the big deal? This is going to be my place now, isn't it? George wasted no time in shutting down her presumptuousness. Cut the nonsense. You don't have a room here, do you? He snapped. But Charlotte persisted, undeterred by George's firm tone. If my parents are moving in here, then technically, this becomes their house, right? So I do have a right to be here, she argued brazenly. We stood there, dumbfounded by her audacity. It became painfully clear that Charlotte had been eyeing our home as her own from the very beginning. Furthermore, she boldly asserted, since I'll be the one spending the most time at home, the largest room here belongs to me. Charlotte's audacious declaration triggered something within me. Your room? I echoed incredulously. Let's see, shall we? With a calm demeanor, I gestured towards the storage shed outside, typically reserved for garden tools. Even if I were to go out of my way, the only space I could possibly arrange for you would be that old shed. And naturally, you'd still be expected to pay rent. Frankly, I'd rather not have you in our new home at all. Could you please leave? Charlotte's face flushed crimson upon hearing my words. Are you serious? She exclaimed, making a move toward me. Fortunately, my husband George intervened swiftly. That's enough, Charlotte, he interjected firmly. Stop causing unnecessary trouble. In stark contrast to his sister's tumultuous nature, George remained composed and level-headed. The only one he'd ever raise his voice against is this woman, Charlotte, who never seems to have any respect for her older brother, George retorted firmly. As our father-in-law's authoritative voice boomed down, even Charlotte fell silent. Charlotte, cut the theatrics and listen up. We're not moving in here, and you need to come to terms with the fact that our old home is gone, George asserted. I couldn't help but stifle a chuckle as I glanced at Charlotte, whose expression resembled that of a startled deer caught in headlights. From the outset, Charlotte seemed to assume that George and I, along with her parents, would continue living together in our new abode. However, that wasn't the case. We had been informed some time ago that our parents were planning to sell the family home and relocate to the countryside. The reason was plain and simple. We're just tired of dealing with Charlotte's antics all the time. We want to enjoy our retirement in peace. Our mother-in-law had expressed her frustration. Charlotte had stormed out of their old home, declaring, I never want to set foot in this house again. I don't consider you guys as parents to me. Just disappear already. Living with Charlotte had taken a heavy toll on my in-laws. Her volatile temperament had led to numerous conflicts, some of which even resulted in legal disputes. Despite her reckless behavior, Charlotte remained unrepentant, leaving her parents to foot the bill for settlements. To cover these expenses, our mother-in-law had taken up part-time work, the financial burden imposed by Charlotte weighing heavily on the family. George and I had done our best to support them, striving to maintain some semblance of peace in our lives amidst the chaos. However, Charlotte, seemingly oblivious to the havoc she had wreaked, showed no gratitude towards her parents. Instead, she only sought their assistance when it suited her own needs. My frustration with her behavior had reached its breaking point. Then I'll just move into your new house with you guys, or I'll end up on the streets, Charlotte finally admitted, a hint of panic evident in her voice as she confronted the truth. Enough, Charlotte. The answer is a resounding no. We've tried to reason with you countless times, but you've refused to listen. Did you honestly believe we overlook everything simply because we're your parents? We're not immune to hurt, Charlotte. We have emotions too. And let's not forget your own words. You guys are no parents of mine. Just disappear already. Our mother-in-law's tone was icy as she addressed Charlotte, whose expression betrayed a mix of shock and realization. Observing Charlotte's crumbling facade, George and I exchanged a knowing glance. Dad, Charlotte's return wasn't prompted by heartbreak or job loss. Sophia and I are fully aware of the truth, George asserted, causing Charlotte to visibly pale. In reality, Charlotte was involved with a married colleague, he continued. She knew about his marital status but chose to continue the affair nonetheless. And when his wife discovered the truth, the affair imploded. Both Charlotte and her lover lost their jobs due to the scandal. They're divorced now, and coincidentally, your lover's wife, who happens to be my friend, crossed paths with me recently. Seeing her after such a long time, I was taken aback by how much weight she had lost. Enjoy your role as a homewrecker. I couldn't help but lash out. You know there's a special place in hell for people like you. Tears threatened to spill as I grappled with the weight of the situation. My husband and I had discussed it, but we hadn't broached the topic with my in-laws yet. We were afraid of upsetting them. No, it's not like that. I fell in love with him, and I couldn't help it. Charlotte defended herself with the same tired excuses that cheaters often use, her gaze chillingly indifferent. Glancing at my in-laws, I could see the fury in their eyes. Without a word, they swiftly escorted Charlotte back to their home. Later, my in-laws informed me that my sister-in-law had resorted to doing household chores in a desperate attempt to gain their approval for moving into their new home. However, their sentiments remained unchanged. Pack your things and leave, my father-in-law repeated like a broken record. Why? I've been working hard around the house. I've been doing laundry and vacuuming. What more do you want? Charlotte finally erupted. There's nothing special about what you're doing. It's basic self-care. Did you expect to be praised for that? You're an adult, my mother-in-law retorted sharply. My sister-in-law blushed, adding a layer of embarrassment to her already wounded pride. I already made my will. All inheritance will go to George. There isn't much left because of you. You've been written out of the will. It's likely to be approved by the court, my father-in-law declared, leaving my sister-in-law visibly stunned. As my in-law's moving day approached, Coinciding with my father-in-law's retirement, my sister-in-law had drastically downsized her possessions to just one suitcase. According to my mother-in-law, she had sold off most of her belongings for cash. As we bid farewell to my in-laws and turned to head back to her car, my sister-in-law inexplicably followed us. "What's the matter?" I asked, puzzled by her presence. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Please, I want to live in your house too. I'll take the small room." But more than her plea, it was the term sis that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at George, and it was clear he shared my sentiments. "Hell no, live with us. Not in your wildest dreams," he retorted bluntly as we made our way to the car and drove off without a second thought. A few days later, while enjoying a quiet day at home, the doorbell interrupted our peace. Seeing the figure on the other side, we both let out a resigned sigh. "Stop bothering us. Do you want us to call the cops?" I warned as I opened the door, only to find my sister-in-law standing there, her desperation evident as she knelt before me. "Please let me stay. I've been bouncing between hotel rooms and odd jobs, but I can't keep living like this," she pleaded. My husband and I were taken aback by the depths of her self-imposed predicament. "I don't care. We're not family anymore," I asserted, attempting to close the door. However, she clung to it stubbornly. "Just give me some money. I've maxed out my credit cards, assuming my parents would bail me out again. And I have alimony to pay, you know. If your friend is really friends with my lover's wife, maybe she could help negotiate a lower payment for me," she implored. We had no desire to engage with her, but her audacious selfishness pushed me over the edge. "Don't push me. I've never encountered someone as despicable as you. Stay away from me. I never want to see your face again," I snapped. Despite her insistence, she refused to leave. Suddenly, her face drained of color as she noticed our dogs barking from inside the house. "Wait, you have a dog?" she questioned, taken aback. We had adopted one of the 3 puppies from my parents' dog. "Would you like to see it?" I offered. Her reaction was immediate. "Who? What? No way. I can't stand dogs. You must be insane to live with one. Count me out of this house," she stormed off, her anger palpable. To be honest, my sister-in-law harbors a deep aversion to dogs. According to George, a childhood incident where a large dog playfully chased her left her traumatized, instilling a lasting fear and dislike for dogs. "Thanks for scaring off that lady, Marin," I murmured, giving our toy poodle a gentle pat. Since then, we haven't crossed paths with my sister-in-law. However, a friend mentioned spotting her in worn-out attire in a distant town. Her current circumstances don't concern me. Frankly, I hope she faces some hardships. George and I are relishing the tranquility of our new home. His parents seem to be thoroughly enjoying their rural lifestyle, occasionally reaching out through video calls and visits. They've managed to keep their address concealed from my sister-in-law, preventing any unwelcome surprises. Both appear healthier and happier, as if a weight has been lifted off their shoulders. A few months after settling into our new abode, we received a wonderful blessing. A baby is on the way. I had heard that stress could impact fertility, which may have been a factor in our previous struggles to conceive. Now, we eagerly anticipate the arrival of our newest family member next year. Gazing at George, his joy evident, I gently caressed my growing bump, filled with hope that he'll remain by my side through all our future endeavors.
It was just a normal morning during the holiday, with the sun shining bright, hinting at a fun day ahead. I was trying to get my son Aaron ready for his baseball game when everything changed suddenly. As I opened the door, I was stunned to see my husband Mark standing there, the same husband who had disappeared without a trace 3 years ago. "This is our home," he stated firmly, but with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Before I could fully comprehend his return, another person appeared behind him. Clara, my sister-in-law. Seeing her made my stomach twist with unease. "We're here to take custody of Aaron," Clara declared, her words dripping with false kindness. I had often wondered about this exact situation, remembering how Mark and Clara had vanished around the same time. It seemed too coincidental to be true. But with the chaos of daily life and limited resources, I hadn't been able to investigate further. Lost in these thoughts, I barely noticed Aaron's voice behind me. "Mom, who are you talking to?" My heart sank. There he stood, my brave son, unaware of the storm brewing. Clara turned her predatory smile toward him. "It's nice to meet you, Aaron." I've been wanting to meet you for a long time. Her words churned my stomach. It was the same voice that had charmed everyone, hiding the manipulative and cruel nature I knew too well, the voice I had hoped to never hear again. Confused, Aaron looked at me and then back at them. Dad, why are you here? And who is she? He edged closer to me, sensing the tension instinctively. Mark and Clara stood there, looking stunned and caught off guard, clearly not prepared for this confrontation. Before they could gather themselves, Aaron spoke up, his voice filled with anger. We're leaving, so move. It was then that Mark and Clara noticed something behind me, and their faces turned pale. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Standing there was my daughter Elise, cradled in Aaron's arms. Mark's eyes widened in shock, darting between Elise and me. Mark, Clara, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. 3 years ago, you disappeared without a word. I was left to pick up the pieces, raise Aaron, and face an unexpected pregnancy. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Clara's eyes narrowed, but I pressed on. I'm not the same person you abandoned. I fought hard to build a life for my children and me, and I won't let you come back to ruin that. Their faces showed shock, disbelief, and perhaps a hint of guilt. But it was too late for guilt. The wounds they caused were too deep. Please leave, I said firmly. You have no right to be here. Mark started to speak, likely with some excuse or plea, but I didn't want to hear it. I closed the door on them, on the past they represented. Turning back to my children, I saw Aaron looking at me with newfound respect, and Elise oblivious to the turmoil. I took a deep breath, steadying my racing heart. This was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my family's future. The days that followed Mark and Clara's unwelcome visit were filled with a whirlwind of emotions and memories, threatening to overwhelm me like a tidal wave. I found myself going back to the difficult times after Mark disappeared, the nights when I couldn't sleep for worry, and the hours spent wondering what I could have done differently. Aaron struggled the most. Once a happy and outgoing kid, he became quiet and distant, his sparkle fading. I remembered how he'd push away his dinner, beg to skip school events, and give me cold looks instead of his usual warm smiles. It hurt to see him like that, but I didn't know how to help him. While I dwelled on those memories, Elise's innocent laughter filled the house, a sharp contrast to the turmoil inside me. She was my unexpected joy, a beacon of light during Mark's betrayal. Her birth gave me strength and vulnerability all at once. One night, as I tucked Aaron into bed, he looked at me seriously. Mom, why did Dad leave us? Did we do something wrong? His question felt like a punch to the gut. No, honey, you did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense, and it's not because of you. But why did he come back with Aunt Clara? His confusion broke my heart. I sighed, trying to find the right words. I don't know why they came back, but I do know that we're a family. You, me, and Elise. We'll face this together. He nodded slowly, his young face full of worries no child should have. I trust you, Mom. I just wish things were like before. I kissed his forehead, whispering, I know, my love, I wish that too. The next day, a call from my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, snapped me out of my thoughts. Lauren, we need to talk about your legal options. Mark and Clara's accusation is unfounded, but we need to prepare a case. I listened intently, my thoughts racing. This was my chance to fight back, to ensure that Mark and Clara couldn't harm us anymore. Let's go for it, I declared firmly. I need to safeguard my children, and I won't allow them to be manipulated by whatever game Mark and Clara are playing. Mr. Thompson's voice was reassuring. You're making the right choice. I'll start getting the paperwork ready. We'll show them that they can't just push you around. As I ended the call, a sense of determination settled over me. Mark and Clara had underestimated me, thinking I'd crumble under their pressure. But they were mistaken. I was stronger now, forged by the challenges I'd faced. I glanced at Elise playing nearby, and knew I'd do whatever it took to protect them. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice for my children and myself. Mark and Clara had ignited a fierce protective instinct in me, and I was prepared to fight back with all my might. As weeks passed, my resolve solidified like steel. I braced myself for the legal battle ahead, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional warfare to come. Mark and Clara, like vultures circling, began their campaign to wear me down. One afternoon, picking up Aaron from school, I found them waiting, casting a shadow over the sunny day. Clara's voice dripped with false sweetness as she greeted Aaron. "Hi, sweetie. We've missed you so much." Aaron clung to my hand, his body tense. "Why are you here?" he whispered. Mark stepped forward, feigning concern. "We just wanted to see you, son. We're family too, you know." Anger surged within me. "You forfeited the right to call yourselves family when you abandoned him," I snapped, pulling Aaron closer. Clara's facade cracked, her eyes narrowing. "Lauren, you can't keep him from us. We have rights." "Rights? You have no rights here," I shot back, my tone icy. "You made your choice 3 years ago. Now you have to live with it." Mark's face contorted with anger. "You think you're so perfect, Lauren. You're just a bitter woman who couldn't keep her husband happy." Aaron's grip on my hand tightened, his body trembling. "Let's go, Aaron," I said, leading him away, but Clara wasn't finished. "You'll regret this, Lauren. We'll get what we want, as we always do." Their threats lingered as we walked away, but I refused to show them any fear. I had to stay strong for Aaron and Elise. That night, their words echoed in my mind as I lay in bed. The thought of losing Aaron to them was unbearable. I couldn't let it happen. I had to be sharper, tougher. The next day, I met with Mr. Thompson, my resolve like armor. "I want full custody of Aaron, and I want Mark and Clara to have no visitation rights," I stated firmly. Mr. Thompson nodded. "It'll be a tough fight, but I'm confident we can win. You're a great mother, Lauren. The court will recognize that." As the legal preparations progressed, I found an unexpected ally at home, Aaron. One evening, he approached me, his young face serious. "Mom, I want to tell the judge I want to stay with you. Dad and Aunt Clara, they're not really my family." Tears filled my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Aaron. That means everything to me." The day of the court hearing arrived like a gathering storm. I walked into the courtroom with Aaron beside me, ready to defend our future. During the proceedings, Clara tried to play the loving aunt, but her words rang hollow. Mark acted like a remorseful father, yet his eyes betrayed his true intentions. When Aaron spoke, his voice steady and resolute, the truth shone through. "I want to stay with my mom. She's been there for me when no one else was." The judge's decision was like a ray of hope. Full custody granted to me with no visitation rights for Mark and Clara. Leaving the courtroom, Mark seethed with anger, and Clara's eyes glinted with malice. But their reactions didn't matter. Aaron and I had prevailed together. While the victory in court brought a brief sense of peace, it was short-lived. Mark and Clara, wounded and desperate, became more dangerous. They launched a smear campaign, spreading lies and rumors about me in our community. I never expected the psychological battle that ensued. One evening, Aaron returned from school, his eyes filled with tears he refused to shed. "Mom, kids at school are saying you took me from Dad, that you're mean for keeping me away from him." His words shattered me. "Aaron, you know that's not true. Everything I've done is to keep you and Elise safe." He nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. "I know, Mom, but it's tough. They just don't understand." I held him close, feeling his trembling frame. "I know it's hard, sweetheart, but we'll endure. We're stronger than their lies." As days passed, the rumors turned uglier. Clara, always sharp-tongued, now wielded her words like a weapon, seeking to dismantle my world. I knew I had to fight back, yet I hesitated to stoop to their level. Then one day, Mark appeared at my workplace, feigning remorse. "Lauren, can't we talk, for Aaron's sake?" His words dripped with venom, his facade transparent. "There's nothing to discuss, Mark. You made your choice. Now you live with it." He gripped my arm tightly. "You're destroying my life. Lauren, you and that kid." I pulled away, my voice steady. "No, Mark, you did that to yourself." As I walked away, his parting threat sent a chill down my spine. "This isn't over, Lauren. I won't give up so easily." The legal win secured custody of Aaron for me, but it didn't put an end to the conflict. Mark and Clara persisted, and I could see how it affected Aaron. He was caught in a battle he couldn't grasp, torn between his biological father and the mother who had never let him down. One evening, Aaron approached me, his face filled with uncertainty. "Mom, what if Dad changes? What if he wants to be a real dad?" His words struck a chord. "Aaron, I understand he's your father, and it's natural to hope for that. But we must see people for who they are, not who we wish them to be." There was a moment of silence before Aaron looked up at me, his eyes clear. "I understand. I just wish things were different." I embraced him, murmuring, "I wish the same, Aaron. I truly do." Amidst the ongoing battle, my focus remained on Aaron and Elise. They were my pillars, the reason I fought relentlessly. And I'd do anything to shield them, to give them a life free from the shadows cast by Mark and Clara's deceit. Their relentless campaign turned darker, veering into harassment. They seemed omnipresent, at my workplace, near Aaron's school, always lingering, always observing. It became a psychological siege, its weight bearing down on me daily. Yet, I refused to be cowed. It was time to retaliate, to show them they couldn't disrupt our lives without repercussions. I arranged a meeting with Mr. Thompson, my determination unwavering. "Mr. Thompson, it's time for more decisive legal action. I want to pursue a restraining order against Mark and Clara, and I want to sue them for harassment and defamation," I asserted. Mr. Thompson agreed wholeheartedly. "I believe that's a prudent step, Lauren. Their behavior is intolerable, and they must face the legal consequences." The legal battles were arduous, but I remained steadfast. In court, Mark portrayed himself as the victim, a man unfairly treated by his vengeful ex-wife. Clara, ever the performer, shed tears over being deprived of a role in her nephew's life. However, their theatrics couldn't obscure the truth. The judge saw through their charade and granted the restraining order. Furthermore, they were instructed to compensate for the harm caused by their defamatory actions. Leaving the courtroom, Mark seethed with anger, while Clara's eyes smoldered with unspoken threats. Yet, this time, I refused to be intimidated. The law was on my side. Their defeat in court failed to extinguish their vendetta. If anything, it seemed to stoke their malice further. One day, I received a chilling call from Mark. "You think you've won, Lauren? You think you can ruin my life and walk away? I'll ensure you regret this," he spat over the phone. I gritted my teeth, suppressing the fear his words ignited. "You brought this upon yourself, Mark. I'm merely safeguarding my family." "You haven't seen the end of me, Lauren. This isn't finished," he snarled before disconnecting. His threat lingered in the air like poison, but I refused to let it weaken me. Aaron and Elise were my top priority. They were my world, and I'd do whatever it took to shield them from Mark and Clara's cruelty. However, as days turned into weeks, the constant strain started to wear me down. The perpetual watchfulness, the dread of what Mark might do next, the weight of single motherhood, it consumed me entirely. One evening, as I tucked Elise into bed, Aaron approached me, his expression serious. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Dad sounded really angry on the phone. I enveloped him in a hug, my heart breaking for the burden he carried. "We'll be okay, Aaron. I won't let anything happen to us, I promise." Yet even as I uttered those words, I knew the battle was far from over. Mark and Clara loomed like a looming storm, and I had to be prepared for whatever they threw our way. The weeks post-court ruling were fraught with tension and vigilance. Mark and Clara, constrained by the restraining order, retreated into the shadows, their silence more unsettling than their threats. I sensed this lull was just the calm before another storm. Then it struck. Clara, in a desperate move, staged a public spectacle. While I was grocery shopping, she emerged out of nowhere, hurling accusations. "You're a monster, Lauren. You've torn our family apart." Clara's cries drew the attention of bystanders. I stood firm, my voice unwavering. "Clara, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order." Enraged, she spat back. "I don't care. The world needs to see your true colors." But her theatrics backfired. The store manager, recognizing the disruption, called the police. As they escorted a hysterical Clara away, her facade of the wronged aunt crumbled. This public meltdown proved to be the tipping point. The police charged Clara with violating the restraining order and causing a public disturbance. Mark, too, faced repercussions. His involvement in the harassment and defamation, now laid bare, led to his arrest. As I witnessed their apprehension, a twinge of pity stirred within me. They had plummeted into their own abyss, a pit of lies and animosity they had dug themselves. Yet this feeling was swiftly eclipsed by a sense of justice. They were finally being held accountable for their actions. In the aftermath, the community's perception shifted. The truth about Mark and Clara's deceit and manipulation came to light. Those who had once whispered behind my back now extended their apologies and support. Aaron, witnessing his father and aunt's downfall, grappled with conflicting emotions. Mom, is it wrong to feel relieved about Dad and Aunt Clara getting arrested? I squeezed his hand, empathizing with his inner turmoil. It's okay to feel relieved, Aaron. They caused us a lot of pain. It's natural to seek justice. The battle that had consumed us for months appeared to be at an end. Mark and Clara, once formidable adversaries, were now diminished. Their ability to harm us had been stripped away. As I tucked Aaron and Elise into bed that night, a sense of tranquility settled over me. We had weathered the storm and emerged triumphant. Our future lay before us, bright and full of promise. Though life had thrust us into turbulent waters, we had learned to navigate the tempest. Now it was time to relish the calm, to embrace the fresh beginning that awaited us.
Mary, it's me, he said, his voice a ghost from the past. It had been a decade since my ex-husband and our son's wife vanished into thin air after eloping. I'd buried thoughts of them deep within, avoiding the pain they left behind. But now, unexpectedly, his voice pierced through the years. I'm going to move into your parents' place. You're still there, aren't you? His demand was as startling as it was unwelcome. I'm sorry for the abruptness, but you need to vacate my home, he insisted, leaving no room for negotiation. His request caught me off guard. A decade had passed since we last exchanged words, and his sudden reappearance left me bewildered. What could he possibly want now, after all this time? And why was he asking to move into my parents' home with his unfaithful partner? Still booking with the folks, huh? Any new spouses since we last talked? His inquiry dripped with a mix of curiosity and condescension. Get out of there, pronto. Anger surged within me for the first time in a decade, fueled by his audacity to mock me further. Little did he know, my living arrangements had changed drastically over the years. Sorry, but if you're eyeing my parents' place, you're out of luck, I retorted. Huh? His confusion was palpable, a stark contrast to the rage boiling within me. I made it clear to him that after a decade, my determination had only grown stronger. Mary Kane, 60 years old, and still teaching part-time at a private school, I asserted. Despite being at retirement age, I persisted with my part-time work, albeit with a reduced salary. My admiration for my parents, both esteemed educators, stemmed from cherished memories of my childhood. Their influence fueled my ambition to follow in their footsteps. There was a time when I had a husband, Stephen, but that chapter ended in divorce a decade ago, and now, out of the blue, he resurfaced after all these years of estrangement. Stephen and I first crossed paths in college, back when I was just 21, juggling part-time teaching at a tutoring center with my studies in education. Stephen, a fresh face at the tutoring center, had recently stepped into the role of a part-time teacher. Despite his seniority in years, it fell upon me with my longer tenure to mentor him as directed by the center's director. As I guided him through the ropes, our camaraderie blossomed into a close friendship, which eventually bloomed into something more. 3 years of courtship later, we exchanged vows and welcomed our son, Michael, into the world. With graduation came a full-time teaching position for me, prompting my departure from the tutoring center. Our journey together as a family was just unfolding, filled with promises of a bright future. 25 years flew by, witnessing Michael find love in Sarah, whom he'd met during his studies at a design school in New York. We rejoiced in their union, hopeful for the happiness they would build together as a couple. Then, unexpectedly, Michael returned home, burdened with something he needed to share. "Mom, you're still married to Dad, right?" His question, though seemingly innocuous, stirred a mix of emotions within me as I welcomed him back, the worry beginning to settle in. I spotted Dad strolling through Brooklyn with Sarah, Michael disclosed. "Okay," I replied, my mind racing with disbelief. According to Michael, he caught sight of Sarah and Dad arm in arm last Friday night in Brooklyn's bustling hotel district. Suspicion gripped him, prompting him to tail them discreetly. His surveillance led him to witness them disappear into a hotel. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Despite being in-laws, Stephen and Sarah shared a bond akin to that of a father and daughter. The notion of them meeting privately, let alone in a hotel, seemed unfathomable. I clung to the hope that it was a misunderstanding or a nightmare, but Michael's evidence shattered that illusion. The image on Michael's phone screen depicted a crystal-clear snapshot of Dad and Sarah entering the hotel arm in arm, unmistakably captured on a Friday night. Dad's excuse of overtime at the office crumbled in the face of this damning proof. Additionally, I couldn't shake off the memory of Stephen's frequent late arrivals home over the past few months. His explanations vary from happy hour gatherings with colleagues to sudden business trips or urgent work demands on holidays. Initially, I accepted his excuses without much skepticism, but upon closer reflection, I realized these occurrences had become more frequent lately. There seemed to be a pattern emerging, one that made me increasingly uneasy. Could these excuses be a cover for spending more time with Sarah? Requesting Michael to forward the image, I assured him I would confront his father before bidding him good night. Anticipation gnawed at me as I awaited Stephen's return home that evening. When he finally arrived, the scent of alcohol clung to him, aggravating my nerves. Summoning my courage, I approached him directly. "Stephen, Michael mentioned something today. Did you meet Sarah last Friday?" Yeah," he stammered, his response lacking conviction. "We did cross paths briefly. We chatted a bit, I think." His sudden alertness and the shift in his gaze didn't escape my notice. Sensing my apprehension, he countered with a question of his own. "What exactly did he tell you?" "He mentioned spotting you and Sarah entering a hotel in Brooklyn," I disclosed, my voice tinged with concern. As I spoke, I held up the picture Michael had given me. Stephen's reaction was immediate. His eyes widened, and he seemed to choke on his words, his gaze darting around as if seeking an escape. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he seemed to resign himself to the truth. "I can't believe Michael caught us," he muttered, his tone a mixture of surprise and resignation. "I let myself get carried away. It's unforgivable." My heart sank as his admission sank in. "No way, Stephen," I whispered, struggling to comprehend the betrayal. Realizing there was no use in denying it any longer, Stephen began to spill everything. He confessed to starting a relationship with Sarah 6 months prior, swayed by her advances and feelings that now eclipsed those for me. My mind reeled at the revelation. Had their affair begun around the time Michael and Sarah celebrated their 3rd anniversary? Despite my trembling shock, Stephen pressed on with his confession. "I want to marry Sarah, Mary. I'm filing for divorce," he declared, his words like a dagger to my already shattered heart. I objected vehemently, my mind spinning with disbelief, but Stephen remained resolute. "I can't continue like this. It's over between us." The following day, Stephen failed to return home. His absence was accompanied by a notable absence of his belongings and a finalized divorce decree left on the table. Later, a distraught call from Michael revealed that Sarah had disappeared, taking the divorce papers with her. It seemed she had no intention of coming back. The shock of Stephen and Sarah's sudden elopement left me reeling. That marked the end of my marriage to Stephen a decade ago. After the divorce, we sold our shared home, and I found solace in a new residence closer to my workplace. Initially, the loneliness of my new surroundings weighed heavily on me. Yet, as I immersed myself in my work, I gradually discovered that time had mended my emotional wounds. Teaching proved to be a powerful balm for my emotional wounds, a fact I only realized with hindsight. The steadfast dedication to my fulfilling career played a pivotal role in my healing journey. Continuing to work part-time at the school even after retirement, I found purpose and joy in the daily interactions with both colleagues and students. With each passing day, the weight of Stephen and Sarah's betrayal diminished, replaced by the gratification of nurturing young minds. 10 years on, thoughts of Stephen faded into the background of my life. While my income saw a decline after transitioning to part-time teaching, it remained sufficient for me to stay engaged with the school and the students who held me in high regard. Their affection and admiration filled a void akin to that of a parent. Additionally, I found solace in Michael's resilience, witnessing him throw himself into his work with renewed vigor, having overcome the initial shock of his father's and wife's betrayal. Any semblance of peace I had managed to find shattered with the shrill ring of the phone. "Hello, Mary, it's Stephen." His voice pierced the silence, breaking a 10-year hiatus. I never anticipated hearing his voice again, and when I did, a surge of emotions overwhelmed me. "What's the purpose of this call? You didn't reach out to reminisce about the past, did you?" My words tumbled out with more force than I intended, fueled by years of pent-up resentment. After all, it was Stephen who had insisted on the divorce, leaving me to pick up the pieces. Stephen, ever composed and seemingly indifferent, countered, "Come on now, what's the point of this? Why did you even bother contacting me? You're the reason we're no longer together. I've moved on, Mary. You're not my husband anymore, and I have no interest in seeing you or hearing your voice. Let's cut to the chase, Mary. You're back at your parents', right?" His casual interruption grated on my already frayed nerves, prompting me to raise my voice once more, struggling to contain the surge of emotions stirred by his insensitive and light-hearted tone. Stephen pressed on, oblivious to my turmoil. "Sarah's expecting," he announced, the news hitting me like a freight train. "But raising the child is proving more financially challenging than we anticipated. Making ends meet has become increasingly difficult." According to his account, despite the significant age gap of 30 years, he and Sarah had shared a passionate bond. However, the dynamics shifted when Sarah fell pregnant last year, upending their lives. Both Stephen and Sarah had quit their jobs ahead of the due date, only to find themselves struggling to secure new employment. Forced to scrape by with part-time work, they faced mounting financial strain. With Sarah unable to work following the birth, their precarious financial situation loomed large. I reached out to Michael and my parents for help, but they all refused. Stephen chuckled over the phone, his words carrying the bitter edge. "Stubborn lot, aren't they?" His laughter echoed in my mind, conjuring images of Stephen's stern father, determined mother, and sullen younger brother, faces I hadn't seen since their wedding 13 years ago. His family, a portrait of strictness, resolve, and seriousness, had cut ties with me after the divorce. Yet, despite our estrangement, I never imagined Stephen as the type to tolerate infidelity or betrayal within his own family. "So, what? You expect me to stay in our old house?" I said yes, but first prioritize your relationship with your wife. Your eldest daughter and first grandchild should take precedence over a mere teacher. Leave now. His abusive tone ignited a fierce anger within me. Had my memories of Stephen over the past decade been too idealized? I hadn't anticipated this callousness from him. Then a realization dawned on me. In a subdued voice, I uttered, "I'm sorry, but if you're referring to my parents' house, it's no longer ours." "What do you mean?" Stephen's confusion mirrored my own, until I clarified. "Both my parents passed away, Dad 3 years ago, Mom just last year. Their house became too much for me to manage alone, so I sold it. I don't have a house to offer you, Stephen." "Ha. I won't disclose my current address, and even if I did, you're not welcome here. Don't ever show up." Stephen's voice boomed with authority. "What about my inheritance? When your parents pass, should the family home and money come to me?" I frowned, angered by Stephen's cold calculations regarding my parents' demise. It was evident he had his eyes set on not only my funds but also my parents' estate. Despite his mention of familial ties, it was too late for any semblance of trust. I had already received my rightful share from my parents' estate, including their house. My parents had made it clear they wouldn't leave a single cent to a man who shamelessly eloped with their daughter-in-law a decade ago. On the day of our divorce, they were incensed upon learning of Stephen and Sarah's betrayal from Michael and me. Their fury was justified. They had treated Stephen like their own son, only to be repaid with the gravest betrayal. Before their passing, my parents took proactive steps to secure their estate, drafting a will to ensure everything, including our family home, would pass on to me in the event of Sarah's return. 7 years after my father's demise, my mother followed, leaving me the sole inheritor of our family's estate. While reluctant to part with the cherished memories embedded in our home, I honored my parents' wishes and decided to sell it. They hoped it would shelter someone more deserving than Stephen and Sarah. Stephen's reaction was explosive upon learning of this decision. "Don't play dumb. You can't. This is absurd. They wouldn't approve." The inheritance was legally passed down to me, I countered firmly. And their forgiveness isn't something I seek, especially not from Stephen and Sarah, who've done nothing but cause turmoil. Stephen, who had idled away his days, had no business meddling in my affairs. As I gazed at my disconnected phone, I realized Stephen's true colors: someone who would abandon others for his own gain, then lash out when denied. It was a revelation that my ex-husband, with whom I'd shared years of my life, could be so immature. As contempt simmered in my heart, another call came through, this time from Sarah. "You didn't bother to inform me about my own in-laws passing," she accused, her voice dripping with accusation. But her words failed to move me. If Sarah had truly been shocked by my parents' deaths, she would have expressed condolences or a desire to pay her respects. Instead, she immediately steered the conversation towards inheritance, legacy, and money, revealing her true priorities. Neither Sarah nor Stephen deserved a place before my parents' altar. With that thought in mind, I cut Sarah off before she could finish speaking. Later, I received a call from Michael. "Mom, did Dad and Sarah show up at your place?" he inquired. "No, they didn't, but they called, asking about the house and their inheritance," I replied. Michael's voice carried a hint of resignation. "I see. I thought they might reach out, especially after they visited me the other day." "Michael, are you okay? Did they cause any trouble?" I asked, concerned. "I'm fine, Mom, really. They just made a scene at my door. When I threatened to call the police, they took off. But I have an idea." Michael revealed his plan to me, prompting a decision to break the cycle of toxicity between Stephen and Sarah, not just for my own sake, but to safeguard my son as he embarked on a fresh chapter. A few days after putting this plan into action, I received a frantic call from Stephen. "Mary, did you have a hand in this? You're unusually quiet," he blurted out. "Don't play innocent. What's going on?" I demanded. "They're on their way to our place," Stephen disclosed. "They? Who?" I pressed for clarification. Stephen explained that 7 women were en route to their apartment, his unfaithful partners. It appeared he'd been carrying on affairs with 7 other women, in addition to Sarah. Unaware of Stephen's infidelities with 7 other women, Sarah found herself caught off guard by the sudden chaos. As the women erupted in anger, Stephen's frustration grew, directed now at Sarah. The revelation of multiple affairs left me dumbfounded. "I knew it was you. How did you uncover my secret?" Stephen demanded. "I wonder," I retorted, "considering I have nothing left after my ex-husband abandoned me for another woman 10 years ago." "What?" Stephen's shock was palpable. Turning the conversation around, Stephen unleashed a torrent of expletives over the phone, but his outburst failed to faze me in the slightest. As Sarah's distress escalated during our conversation, she hastily packed her belongings, unleashing a heated argument with Stephen, oblivious to my presence on the line. It was a chaotic scene unfolding before my ears, reminding me of the saying, "Things spiral out of control." With a heavy heart, I directed my final words to my ex-husband, though they may have fallen on deaf ears. "Farewell, Stephen. Never darken my doorstep or our son's life again." With that, I ended the call. Little did Stephen know, the tumult sparked by the women he had been unfaithful with was the very plan Michael had alluded to. After Stephen and Sarah's tumultuous visit to Michael's home, where they were swiftly turned away, he wasted no time in enlisting the services of a professional detective agency to delve deeper into their affairs. As it turned out, Stephen's infidelity with Sarah had escalated into affairs with 7 other women, 3 of whom were married. Michael promptly relayed this information to me, along with Stephen and Sarah's current address, the very apartment uncovered by the detective agency. With this knowledge in hand, Michael and I coordinated a plan. We informed all 7 women of Stephen and Sarah's whereabouts and directed them to confront the couple simultaneously. The resulting chaos at Stephen and Sarah's apartment grew so intense that law enforcement had to intervene, dispatching police to the scene. Sarah ended her relationship with Stephen, and he found himself facing lawsuits from 3 aggrieved husbands, each demanding alimony payments exceeding 3 figures. Losing Sarah, his home, and his financial stability, Stephen now lives as a homeless individual in a park, struggling to make ends meet. A colleague spotted him seeking assistance at a soup kitchen. Meanwhile, Sarah, facing her own financial burdens, was hit with alimony demands surpassing 3 figures. Forced to borrow money to cover her expenses, she turned to a black market lender, a decision that would soon prove ominous. Shortly after securing the loan, she was forcibly abducted by intimidating individuals in a car, and her whereabouts remain unknown. 10 years have passed, and I've finally reached a final resolution with Stephen. Once again, I've returned to the tranquility of my life. While I remain single, contentment fills me as I immerse myself in the vibrant atmosphere of school. That alone is sufficient for me. In time, Michael found love with a woman who has a child of her own. They are now dating with the intention of marriage. My heart swells with hope that Michael, too, will discover a newfound joy and purpose in life.